Today we're talking about federalism, and I'd like to take a second to remind you that you do have a handout that accompanies the screencast. So if you would you stop at the appropriate times and answer the questions or conduct the activities that I'm asking you to do along with federalism today? Let's go ahead and get started. I'll start with the basic definition. What is federalism? Federalism is the division of powers between national and state governments. More generally, sometimes someone would say it's a division of power between the central and regional governments, but we call ours national and state. If you look at the simple illustration down here, you have the national government on the top. The dotted line represents the division between the two levels, and then we have the state government on the bottom. Of course, there's 50 different states down below on this level, and there's one national government that covers the entire region of those 50 states on the top. Now, we'll also discuss a little later that the national government is supreme over those 50 state governments. So that is also an important part of our federalism, that the national government is on the top with its own set of powers, and the state governments are subservient below the national government. I'm going to provide you with a simile here that compares cake to federalism. What a simile is, it's a comparison between two items. It uses like or as. I said federalism is like a cake. My explanation is because they both have layers to divide up their contents. So if you look at the cake here, of course we know there are many different types of cakes, but if you think of a cake with layers, those layers can often be divided. The same can be said about our federal form of government. We have the national government on the top as one layer, and then there's a division between it and the 50 state governments with the other layers beneath. This illustration also helps you put it in perspective. If this is the United States, we have two different and distinct levels: the national level on the top, and then the state and local level on the bottom. And I said state and local because we usually refer to this as the state level, but within the states it can be further broken down into counties, and townships, and cities and towns themselves. Real quickly, we'll look at the difference between a confederate and a federal form. Now, we discussed these earlier, so hopefully this is a bit of review for us. If you start in the middle, we'll see that both a confederal or a confederate and a federal system have small political units that exist within the same territory as a large political unit. So another way of saying that is they both have states that exist within a larger nation. Now, we talked about the Articles of Confederation. Obviously, the word confederation, confederal, the same there. That referred to our first American political system in which a large political unit had little power. So the national government was very weak. And we said that the small political unit, or the state, had most of the powers. And this was a major issue because the national government was unable to bond our country together. Now when we swing over to the federal system, we see that the large and small political units each have important but separate powers. Some powers are also shared between the larger and the smaller political units. So in the federal system, the smaller units do not have more power. And in fact, in our system, the national government, which is on the top level, has the majority of the powers, or at least has the supreme powers. We'll skip that previous slide for a second and focus on the supremacy clause. There is a supremacy clause in our Constitution which says the national government is the supreme power. It has authority over the state governments when dealing with shared powers. So a simple way to think about this is, imagine a situation where the state and the national government both created laws regarding the same topic, yet those laws did not agree with each other. Which law would we keep and which would we throw out? Well, since the national government is supreme, we would keep their law and we would throw out the state law. It would be unconstitutional, null, or void, however you'd like to say it. And this is exemplified in a historic case called Gibbons versus Ogden. And in the case of Gibbons versus Ogden, we were dealing with ferry boats that chartered people back and forth between the harbors of New York and New Jersey. Now, one gentleman who operated a ferry boat between New York and New Jersey, he got a license from the state of New York to operate his steamship. And it specifically said that he was the only person allowed to transport passengers within the state of New York. Now, the second gentleman also got the right to transport passengers, but he got the right to transport passengers from the national government. And when they went to court, Gibbons and Ogden were arguing with each other, and the courts decided that since they were transporting individuals between New York and New Jersey, they were doing something called interstate trade or interstate commerce. Now, the national government has the power to regulate interstate commerce. So therefore, this was really a national power. Therefore, the New York license was null and void, didn't have any power. So in this example, we see where a state and the national government are issuing licenses, and ultimately it's the national license that is more important than the state level. Now I'm going to ask you to do a little bit of work yourselves. Your task is to create your own simile. Again, a simile is a comparison that uses like or as to compare two terms. And you need to describe federalism by comparing it with another object or idea. This is on your handout, so if you find the appropriate question, you can write down your example and also explain it. Explain why your example works, why you used the simile that you chose. And you will share your simile with the class tomorrow, so I'll ask you guys for your examples. Now we have 3 questions to end it for you, and again these questions are also on your handout. These are hot or higher order thinking questions. The first one asks you, why do we divide powers between the state and national governments? So we know that's what federalism does. Now the question is, why would we separate those powers? I want you to give it your best shot here on these questions. If you're not 100% sure, that's okay. Your second higher order thinking question is this. When you consider the geographic size of the United States and the diversity of its citizens, why does it make sense to reserve certain powers to the states? So thinking about the size and the diversity of our country, why does it make sense to reserve certain powers to the states, meaning that the states get to make laws regarding things such as marriage laws, and the national government has no say? Why does that make sense? And your final higher order thinking question for the night: why is it important for the national government to be supreme? Why didn't we make the state government supreme? Why is the national government supreme? And that is your final question for the night. Again, please make sure you complete your handouts. If you have any questions, you can check in with me in the morning before class. And good luck.